Have you ever asked yourself the ultimate question? How is existence possible? I mean, let's be real, to exist is fucking weird. Have you ever looked around and acknowledged how absurdly strange this reality is? To have a body in a world of objects is mind-blowing. So take a goddamn second out of your lives to stop watching cat videos and ask yourself, what is this place? And how is it possible? We're going to show you right now that existence is possible because you don't exist in the way that you think you do. Author Dan Carpenter said, "People take everything in this world for granted. The whole setup we have found ourselves in is mind-bendingly ludicrous on every level. But the absurdity of finding ourselves in a body with no explanation is so monstrously strange as to be debilitating." The fact of existence is so incredibly strange and seemingly beyond understanding that people distract themselves with pastimes, their job, and their social life, and they completely ignore the question altogether. In fact, they distract themselves so well, they actually manage to forget the enigma of existence that faces them every day, and they've convinced themselves that everything is perfectly normal and there's nothing strange about it. Well, it's time to wake the fuck up and answer the question of existence now. This is information the world at large has never seen before, so pay attention. Quantum mechanics shows that everything in existence is described by a wave function. And as we have shown in other videos, reality is composed of nothing but mathematical energy waves, sine and cosine waves, that's it. This is a mathematical reality, and you are not a body, you are a mind, a soul, which is a container of infinite energy. Your mind contains a full and complete set of sine and cosine waves, all rationally governed by the soul equation, Euler's formula. Keep all of this in mind as we go forward, and if you aren't familiar with this, watch our other videos now for an in-depth description. The answer to the question of existence is found in the concepts of zero and infinity, nothing and something. The concept of one is also critically important, but we will address that in a later video. In Hyperianism, numbers are not just scratch marks on paper, but these marks stand in for or represent things that have actual existence, that is, waves of energy, sine and cosines. Now stay with me here because we're going to do some really simple math. It's as easy as 1 minus 1, but this has to be understood in order to answer the ultimate question of existence. When we talk about the number 1, it's not just a scratch mark on paper, but instead it represents a wave with an amplitude of 1, while the number -1 represents a wave with an amplitude of -1. So, when we talk about the numbers 1 and -1, we are using these symbols to represent a real thing. They represent a wave with an amplitude of 1 and -1. If you were doing mathematics, like how you would in school, you would see that 1 take away 1 equals 0, and it would look like this. But that is the wrong way to look at mathematics. The number 1 actually represents an energy wave with an amplitude of 1, while the -1 represents an energy wave with an amplitude of -1. Now, by the law of conservation of energy, energy can never be created or destroyed. So look again at the equation, remembering that these are not just abstract numbers, but that we are using them to represent real things with actual existence. That is, energy waves of different amplitudes. Don't think of it like 1 take away 1, but look at each number as a separate wave of energy existing together. These numbers are not going to destroy each other because they represent real things. That is energy, and energy cannot be destroyed. So they don't destroy each other, for they can never be destroyed, but their combined energy levels result in 0. Their total energy adds up to 0. It's crucial to understand this point. They do not destroy each other, they remain in existence, but their total energy adds up to 0. Look at it this way. In our example equation, how many waves of energy does 0 contain? It contains 2 waves of energy. One wave of energy with an amplitude of 1, and one wave of energy with an amplitude of -1. These two waves interact with each other, and their total energy adds up to zero. So in our example equation, 0 contains two energy waves of opposite energy levels that are perfectly balanced to one another. Even though their total energy adds up to 0, they are not destroyed, they still exist. Let's use a simple example in physics just to get a better understanding of this concept. Let's say that you have a box, and on this box there is a 1 Newton downwards force, the force of gravity. Now a Newton is just a unit of force, like a pound, so don't let that confuse you. So on this box, there is the 1 Newton downwards force of gravity. Let's say that you're also holding it up, so there is also a 1 Newton upwards force on the same object by your hands. So what is the total force? The total force on the object is 0. The two forces don't destroy each other, they're still there. But the total force on the object adds up to 0. It's not like the forces destroyed each other. You're still pushing up on the box with a force of 1 Newton, and gravity is still pulling the box downwards with a force of 1 Newton, but they completely balance each other out, and the total force on the box is 0. Even though the total force is 0, the forces are still there, acting on the box. Now think again about the energy waves. There is a wave with amplitude 1 and a wave with amplitude -1. Their total amplitude adds up to 0. But just like the forces in our previous example, the energy waves don't go away, destroy each other, or stop existing. That is impossible by the law of conservation of energy. They still exist, but their total energy adds up to 0. Let's take this a step further. Now imagine that there are not just two energy waves, but an infinite number of waves. There are an infinite number of positive energy waves and an infinite number of negative energy waves. What this means is that every energy wave has its opposite inside of the equation, just like positive 1 has negative 1. If there is a positive energy wave for every negative energy wave, then this will result in perfect balance, perfect 0. We can now say that 0 equals positive infinity and negative infinity, or a better way to put it, all possible numbers. 0 equals energy waves at every possible amplitude. Here you can see that 0 equals infinity. They are two different ways of looking at the same thing. 0 is the total result of an infinite number of balanced energy waves. 0 can be thought of as a container of infinite energy. 0 isn't empty. 0 is full and pulsing with energy. But remember, your mind is a container of infinite energy. So yes, your mind, your soul, is represented by 0. The mind is 0. The mind is infinite. 0 is a container of infinite energy, and so is your mind. They are one and the same. Your mind is a singularity defined by 0. Reality consists of nothing but minds, souls, and their infinite energy contents. Reality consists of nothing but zeros. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why is there anything at all? Reality consists of nothing but zeros. Reality must exist because it is perfectly nothing and something at the same time. It is 0 and yet it is infinite. All that exists is infinite energy. There is nothing but sine and cosine waves and the minds that contain those waves. Every mind contains infinite energy that perfectly balances to 0. We are now able to answer the ultimate question of how anything can possibly exist. The only thing that exists is 0. Imagine an equation where 0 is on one side and the other is infinitely complex, as it represents the infinitely complex mathematical interaction of sine and cosine waves. Even though there is an infinity of waves interacting in infinitely complex ways, it all ultimately balances to perfect 0. Now imagine that you only saw one side of the equation. Imagine that you only saw the infinitely complex side and that you didn't know that it balanced to zero. It would seem like a vast and intricate world of complexity. It would seem like an entire universe of something. Now imagine the opposite, that you only saw the left side of the equation and you had no knowledge at all of the right side of the equation, that is, the complex side. If all you knew was the zero side, then everything would seem empty, a total void, a complete dark room of blank absolute nothing. This next part is critical. When you are experiencing life, when you are experiencing this reality, as you are right now, you are experiencing portions of the right side of the equation. You look around and you see the material world in all of its massive complexity, an entire universe of something. You have found yourself in the middle of a tiny portion of the right side of the equation, and you experience it as something. This is because reality is filtered through the limiting mechanisms of the human senses. However, when you begin to question reality and existence, this seems strange to you. You ask yourself, how can something exist at all? But now think carefully about the left side of the equation. What if everything was absolute zero? What if instead of all this something that you are experiencing, there was instead absolutely nothing? What if everything was a dark, blank void, a total nothing? If that were the case, would you still have your question? No, of course you wouldn't. Your question would be satisfied. Your mind intuitively knows that the answer of nothing would logically satisfy your question, but because you are experiencing something, the chairs, the trees, the world as you are right now, there is a seeming contradiction. You think to yourself, how can there be something? There should be nothing. How is it that it's possible that there's something, anything at all, when there should be nothing? So here you are, confronted by this seeming paradox. You are experiencing something, but cannot account for how it could exist, when your mind can only grasp the logical existence of nothing. You are experiencing a tiny fraction of the right side of the equation, and you are experiencing that as something, while your mind, when trying to logically work out reality, wants the left side of the equation in order to logically satisfy the question of existence. That is, it desires the logical answer of nothing because it cannot logically answer how something could possibly exist. The answer to this question, the question of all questions, this seeming paradox that has eaten at the minds of the people of this planet for millennia, is that something and nothing are the same thing. And this is accurately expressed in a simple equation. The truth is that there is both something and nothing, and that they are the same thing, just viewed in different ways. When you are inside this sea of complexity and experiencing only a small portion of it, it seems very much like something. But if you were able to pull yourself out of this sea and observe it in itself as it is, completely and totally whole, you would see that it all comes together and balances to perfect nothing. All of this confusion comes from the misunderstanding of what something and nothing actually are. Humanity is only seeing one side of the equation due to the filtering mechanisms of the brain, when in actuality both sides of the equation exist, and they define each other. Something, when viewed and understood completely, balances to perfect zero, to perfect nothing. And nothing is not empty, but a vast sea of complexity, a tangled web of interacting sine and cosine waves that ultimately balance to zero. Look at the electromagnetic spectrum. You can only see this small portion, the portion of visible light. You are experiencing only a tiny portion of reality. And this is why it seems like something. If you were able to right now experience all of infinite reality all at once in total completeness, you would understand that everything balances and comes together into perfect Nothing. Zero. Imagine it like a drawing. A drawing only looks like something because of the dark areas, the shading. That's what gives it definition. Reality is like this, and the parts that you are not perceiving are like the dark areas. If you saw everything all at once, it would be like a drawing without any shading. That is, nothing at all. How is existence possible? It's because nothing can stop zero from existing. Zero must exist because it is perfectly nothing. This has been explained in a very simplistic way, in a very short amount of time. To truly explain this would take years and intricately complex equations, but we have attempted to give you an intuitive understanding. Because of this, it is possible that you may mistake what we are trying to show you. What we are trying to communicate should not be taken as something bad. In fact, it reveals reality to be a vast playing ground for us, for you, for I. It means that all possibilities can be actualized. We can create this reality into whatever we so will. The universe is our canvas. All things are available to us. All art and creativity will be at our fingertips, and we can create entire worlds of experience. Truly, we are the dream builders. We are the grand architects of reality. Some of the rulers of this world understand this concept, but not nearly as well as we do. They understand it through stories in a very simplistic and childish way. They are trying to exert their will onto this reality by enslaving minds and keeping them at a low level of optimization so that they can use them. We seek the liberation of all minds, so that they may become shapers themselves, and so that we may all engage in constructing a brilliant reality of freedom, expression, and art. We face a difficult task, as it is much easier to enslave a mind than it is to free a mind. How easy it is for a human to spend countless hours watching empty Facebook memes, and how difficult it is for them to spend time studying philosophy, creating art, learning mathematics, and understanding information such as this. Understand what we have shown you. Realize the importance of this information. We have shown you the nature of zero and infinity. Through these videos, history is being made right now, and Hyperianism will change this world forever. You can either remain a pawn trapped in the slave system of this culture, or become liberated through logic, reason, and mathematics. Are you going to have an average, mundane life, or will you change the world? Don't be satisfied with old humanity. It's time to go higher. Become a Hyperion and join us as the shapers of reality. Ad Astra. To the stars. Make sure you like and subscribe and check out my Patreon for hidden videos. You are getting a glimpse into their soul, into their mind, as you experience music created by a true artist. That's what you're doing. They are creating a world for you to experience. And I want to say thank you, my friends, for all your support on Patreon. It's been amazing, and it's because of you these videos are possible, and our movement is rising. Thank you for your support.